All right, and we are back. So, God damn, straight away. Now, today's episode is something I've been researching for the past, bit. I'm trying to find a way to make it more concise and trying to bring you the most interesting points. I've been looking at historical events that take place during Ramadan. So when I say that, I mean it could be any sort of very major event. Now, a lot of what we have writings about that is well documented is major battles, and to me that's particularly interesting because it is very hard to fight a war while your troops are fasting and while everything is fasting. And this is a case that's kind of repeated throughout history. So you'll always go through and find that, well, especially for Muslim history, a lot of major battles, you could say almost like turning point battles for Muslims, have been won in, or fought and won in Ramadan. So one particular battle, which I do want to get into today, is the better Battle of Ain Jalut. So Ain Jalut was a battle that was fought between the Mameluke and the Mongol Empire. So I'm going to give a bit of background about it, then get to the actual, discussion of the battle, some of the aftermath and all that stuff. And we can, elaborate on those details. And it is kind of one of my favorite one of my favorite talking points for in terms of battles during Ramadan, just because it is so interesting and just because of the scale of the enemy that they were fighting. The Muslim Mamelukes were fighting. It was an enemy that was basically feared throughout the entire world. Not just feared, people had some almost biblical. It was actually biblical levels of despise for these people, uh, which I will get into. So let's give a bit about the Mongols for those of you who don't know. So the Mongols were basically you could say, what is the best word to describe them? They were an empire, and they were actually the largest contiguous empire in history. So they had the largest single empire that ever spanned Earth. I think the only thing that came second to it was the British under the king or queen or whatever it was at the time. Now, at a point, I think they had something like 32% of Earth's population or 32% of Earth's land that was actually under their rule. And it was all really started by a guy called Genghis Khan in 1162. So, in terms of like timing for the Mongol Empire, you can really imagine it. It was sort of when there was the Abbasids, and the Abbasids were like another, you could say, an empire or a caliph that was, on its decline. So it was kind of that era for Muslim history. Uh, and it kind of spanned over towards post it spanned over to post crusades, I would say. Is that correct? Let me do a quick Google. uh it was, where we are, 1206 it started. Battle of Hattin. Let's have a quick Google. 1187. Yeah, so it was just after Salah ad-Din. I believe he was dead at the time, though, or he was very old. Yeah, he was 1193. So it was kind of just after Salah ad-Din. So, you know, things were on the way down for them. Now, the Abbasids had their capital in Baghdad at the time. And basically, Genghis unified all of the Mongol tribes, because the Mongols were very tribal. So what he did in Mongolia, he unified all of these smaller tribes under one banner. unified all of Mongolia, and they basically decided that we're going to start conquering. We're going to go west and conquer, and they did that extremely successfully. Uh, and they just started going west and west and west and west. They reached Uzbekistan. They got to Samarkand. They got to they reached Baghdad, which we'll get into it a second. They reached parts of Europe, China, everything. It was one of the fastest and most aggressive conquests in history. Now, on top of this, some other details, the Mongols were known to be especially brutal for people that opposed them. So they did have some sort of freedom of religion, you could say. They were not really restrictive on people's religions. They were basically, if you go against us, we're going to kill not just you, we're going to kill you, your kids, your grandkids. We're going to salt your earth. We're going to burn everything you have. We're going to make sure that you don't exist in history. So they were incredibly brutal and gruesome, and they were just incredibly aggressive, which may have been one of their points of success. But yeah, it was you know maybe not the best. It was pretty horrible. Now, so Genghis does his expansion. Genghis dies. He gives a succession to his son. His son does his thing, and then it goes down to his grandson. So Helegu is his grandson, and he decides that, you know what, we're going to start fighting the Abbasids. We're going to start, there was a whole bunch of political things that were going on at the time. I'm not going to get into those details. But basically, we need to go now and we need to get rid of these Abbasids. And the Abbasids' capital was in Baghdad. Now, you may have heard of, the term like, oh, there have been a sacking of Baghdad, the sacking of Baghdad. Now, Baghdad, when it got sacked by Telugu and by the Mongols, it was the sacking lasted something like 13 days or 15 days. Now, on any historical account, after this conquest of Baghdad, the Abbasids were basically, they were gone. They were all finished. It was the decline. That was the real nail in the coffin for them. After that, the 13 days of sacking of the city of Baghdad, on the very lowest accounts, they will find that 200,000 people were killed. On the highest accounts, it was something around 2 million. So we're talking about a level of killing that is more than gruesome. I mean, they said the river through Baghdad was running red from how much killing there was. I mean, people were having accounts of like people being dragged throughout the streets, and the last person who was killed was in fact the caliph, whatever his name was. He was killed. Now there is some accounts that say that he was starved to death, or the Mongol ruler put him in a room with all his gold that he was so fond of, and he told him, you love your gold so much, you should eat it. How accurate that was, I don't know. But what was known that the amount of people that died throughout Baghdad, let's just say an average 1 million people, 13 days of just pure non-stop killing. Uh, it's horrible to think about, and it's probably one of the saddest events in Muslim history. Now, on top of the kind of priceless lives that were lost, on top of that, they burned something like 1 million books. And now keep in mind, these books were like the last remaining manuscripts from ancient Greece and ancient Rome and all that stuff. These were all translated into Arabic because Arabic was a very dominant language at the time, especially for sciences and things like that. So just imagine how much knowledge, how much history we had lost from humanity just from this burning of all these books. I mean, even on top of all of this, uh, they also salted the earth. Like apparently, it took a couple of centuries, not decades, centuries, for the agriculture just to be back to what it was before the sacking of Baghdad. So you can just tell the scale of destruction. They destroyed everything, and this was kind of the theme for the Mongols. It was very much that if you oppose us, this is what we're going to do to you. So this had happened, and then there was also they managed to take Damascus as well, Aleppo, all that stuff, Syria. So after all that, they had the Mongols had sent an envoy towards Cairo, where the Mamluk were. Now, the leader at the time was a guy called Qutuz. Qutuz, he was the ruler at the time. He also had one very, very strong general who's very important to the story or the history, you could say. His name is Baybars. Now, they sent this envoy. Basically, the Mongols sent this envoy to Qutuz, and he was telling him, "Hey, listen, you got to submit to the Khan's rule, or basically what we did to Baghdad, we will do it to you. We don't care." Now, before this, let me find you this. I have this here. Let me just open it up for you. Jalut letter. It was. This is what was given from Hulagu Khan. I could just find it. Now, I'm going to read this letter from Hulagu Khan, Hulagu, to the Sultan Qutuz. Now, before the battle, he said this: "From the King of Kings of the East and West, the great Khan, to Qutuz the Mamluk, who fled to escape our swords. You should think of what happened to other countries and submit to us. You heard how we conquered a vast empire and purified the earth of the disorders that tainted it. We have conquered vast areas, massacring all the people. You cannot escape from the terror of our armies. Where can you flee? What roads will you use to escape us? Our horses are swift, our arrows are sharp, our swords are like thunderbolts, our hearts are as hard as the mountains. Our soldiers are as numerous as the sands. Fortresses will not detain us, nor armies stop us. Your prayers to God will not avail against us. We are not moved by tears nor touched by lamentations. Only those who beg our protection will be safe. Hasten your reply before the fire of war is kindled. Resist, and you will suffer the most terrible catastrophes. We will shatter your mosques and reveal the weakness of your gods, and then we will kill your children and your old men together. At present, you are the only enemy against us. You are the only enemy against whom we have to march." So it was basically, straight up submit or else. Uh, and really, there was a lot of thought by a lot of the people there, especially that, yeah, like we should probably submit. This is probably the right thing to do. We have to submit to this and stay alive. Now, at the time, just by how brutal and how swift and how strong the Mongols were, a lot of the Muslims at the time thought that the Mongols were Juj and Ma'juj, legitimately thought that this was the end of times. Oh, that's it. Khalas, it is done. They're coming here. The hadith matchup, it's coming from an area somewhere over there, uh, coming from the east. This was, people were thinking this is the end of time. That's it. Like, there's nothing we can do to defeat these people.